This is the Venturing Angler Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we'll be chatting with Mike Mercer. Mike is a legendary fly tyer and destination angler who works in the travel department at the fly shop in Redding, California. Let's chat with Mike. All right, we're here with Mike Mercer from the Fly Shop. Mike, welcome to the Venturing Angler Podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Tim.
So, the Fly Shop has been well known for as long as I can remember, and I guess longer than I've been alive, for fly fishing travel. And now the Fly Shop is outside of Alaska, looking at destination travel with the new Lower 48 travel program. How did this come about?
Well, yeah, Tim, it's kind of like you just said. I mean, we for 40 years have been doing international travel, and it's always been a very important facet of our business. We love it. We do a lot of it, and it's just a lot of people think about us. So there's a lot of people out there don't even realize we sell stuff, waders and rods. It's like, oh, that's where I go to for my travel. But of course, with the COVID and all the international borders closing down, outside of Alaska, of course, that's not international, but it's really like kind of put us on hold travel wise. And so, everyone in here in our travel department, we all have some connection to domestic travel, whether it being having run an Alaska lodge or, having like myself, I've been going to Montana, for 50 years. Just different things. Just we all have some of the guys have ran tarpon operations and redfish guides in Louisiana and Florida, and so we all love domestic. We all do it on our own time, and in some cases we've made a livelihood doing it. So the truth is, everyone in the travel department here has always kind of secretly wanted to have a domestic program, but the truth is the international business has been so strong that we've just never really had time to. We always think, man, it would be cool to do. Like for me, I'd love to do a Rocky Mountain program because I love it. I've been going there every year most of my life, and I know it. And it'd be so cool to be able to introduce people to the various operations are back there and the different style of fishing. And because I have tons of passion for that country, not even just the fishing, but the country. I mean, I think I just love to help people experience the same thing I have. And so when this international shutdown happened, it's like, okay, and now we're selling 2022, 2023 trips, and that's great. But it's like we're busy, but we're suddenly, for the first time in 40 years, we're not overwhelmed. For the first time, it's like we're not scrambling to get the letters done and the new lodge and all this different stuff. Is like, what do we do? And so we thought, this is our chance. We've been wanting to do this for a long time. Let's jump in it. And so we have, and it's been really cool because we've got, a lot of relationships with people that own lodges around the lower 48, friends and colleagues and people who have gone on hosted trips with us to different lodges in the world. And just like, people, I like for myself, I just met so many people in the industry in Montana over so many years I've been going there that it's just kind of a natural. And so we've just started reaching out to people we've known more than anything to start with, and then a few people that we don't know as well, but we know them by reputation because other people in the industry or friends have said, man, this lodge is amazing. You have to experience this thing. And so we've just done our homework over the last months and just put the foundation in place so that we can start sharing, what is passionate in our own hearts, what we do in our own time off to fish, we can start sharing that with people a little bit. And it's available in this time of COVID when you can't go international. To a large degree, you can still travel in the United States and in the lower 48. And so it's just been kind of a fortuitous thing, and we're all really excited about it. It's an opportunity just selfishly to see business at a time when it's hard to find the international business. And just passionately because I think this time of COVID has made us appreciate even more what we have locally and pseudo-locally, maybe like for us in California, in the Rocky Mountains. I mean, relatively local. It's fairly close, we really appreciate that even more than ever. It's like, wow, if this was taken away from us, that would be catastrophic. But it's not it's not taken away from us. It's amazing. Let's get people here so they can see what it is. I mean, before there was a little bit of a selfish side. It was like, I don't want to send people to Montana. I was like, I want to keep it all for myself. But as the COVID kind of realigns our emotions and thought processes, I think, and our values and what we find very valuable, it's like, no, let's share this. And we have the background information. We know what we're talking about already. It's not like we're trying to start from ground zero here. We've been there. We've done that. And I think just people are going to love it. So anyway, long-winded way.
No, it's funny. I always just assumed that you guys had a domestic travel program outside of Alaska. And it's in part because I fish with Justin a bit, and he fishes throughout the U.S. And I know that I was in Montana this summer when Pat Bendergast was fishing all around Montana, and
oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
He and I were both, I mean, probably passing each other on the road. But and then there's Eric, who's guided throughout the U.S., I think. And so, and then how long have you been fishing in Montana?
Since I was before teenager. I'm 61 now, so I mean, pretty close to 50 years. But I mean, for the last 35 years annually. And it's just, I mean, I go there, I take a 2-week vacation every year and go back and just basically my friend and I have been doing it forever. And we just go back and we rent hotels and we just use hotels for base of operations. And we go out for long day fishes. You know, maybe we'll hike 5 or 8 miles into the backcountry and fish and then come back out, you know, collapse, come the next morning, do the next thing. And for me, it's great. It's like fish gypsying, right? You get up every day and decide what you're going to do. And there's so much freedom to that. And it's just so amazing. And of course, a lot of lodges offer the same sort of thing. I mean, right. But with guides.
So. Yeah. So you've been fishing these areas longer than most people maybe have been fishing. And I can't imagine, I'm sure that a lot of your flies have been inspired by experiences in these areas. And so, it gets back to the idea that, I can't believe there wasn't a program already, and especially because you have such good relationships with so many lodges throughout the U.S. And so it's great to see this finally happening, and anglers throughout the country and the world benefiting from the expertise that the Fly Shop has throughout the U.S.
Yeah, it is kind of like I said, fortuitous, and we kind of like got forced into it, so to speak. I mean, but now that we're there, it's like, why didn't we do this? And we couldn't, but now we can. And so we may end up putting more people on when the COVID's over, because the lower 48 program wonderfully has been picking up pace very quickly. And so obviously there's a lot of demand for it. And I think it's not just pent up demand from people who would rather be internationally fishing. I think there's a lot of people who want to fish locally, who maybe internationally isn't their thing, but they want to do big trips and they want to have these big adventures, and they realize I can do that, a short plane flight away, and everyone still speaks English, and everything's a little more familiar, what I like, and maybe I'm really a trout guy, so Montana's perfect for me, or Idaho's perfect for me. So yeah, it's something that it really is, I think, has probably been a long time coming.
I would have loved to have been in the room when the staff at the Fly Shop were deciding on regions and destinations. What were some of the rationale going into this process?
Well, really, I think when we first said, it kind of a common light bulb went on above all our heads. We were sitting there thinking, man, I mean, we're very busy, taking care of all these people that we're having to roll over till next year, and all the bits and pieces that go into taking care of all the booked people that can't go the next year like they had planned. I mean, that took months to get ahead of that curve. But at the same time, we're thinking, we're not really selling a lot right now. What can we do? And it was kind of like a community light bulb went on. It's like, hey, Eric, you've been guiding, carpet guys in Florida and redfish guys in Louisiana and Texas, and Mercer, you've been fishing the Rockies forever. And Eric, you've been living in Montana and fishing a different part of Montana that Mercer's been fishing forever. And we could just go down the line, and we've all had a lot of experience in the lower 48. And it's like, man, why are we not doing this? I mean, we've all in the past, in passing, we can all remember conversations like, man, I really would like to look at these amazing lodges I know about in Montana. I really like to be representing those people. Like, oh, no, we don't have time. You can't keep up with the sales you got already. Just forget it. It's like, oh, all right, you're right. And now it's like, okay, it's like, it's time. And so, yeah, it was just it all kind of happened in one day, kind of coalesced in one day, to be honest with you. We were all busy working on things, and somebody mentioned something, and then I think Pat brought it up, and then I thought, yeah, I would love to do that. And then Eric chimed in. I was like, yeah, I could do my part. And the boss wasn't even here. So we pretty much just started it. And then luckily when he came in the next day, he gave it the blessing. So
that's funny.
So yeah, it was good. And it's fun because we all have a lot of passion for it. We all want to do it. And I think anytime in a business you've been doing something a long time and something new and exciting enters the picture, it is exciting. It's like, yeah, let's do this, and jump into it and start renewing relationships with people in lodges and people you've met over the years and people and done business with and people you've talked for years about. Man, if we ever start this program, I'm calling you. Well, now's the time. I'm calling you. And it's been fun because a lot of those people that we have long-term relationships with are excited too. They say, yeah, no, we'd love to have you to represent us, and let's do this. So, yeah.
That's great. Are there any lodges or areas or rivers that you're especially excited to share with current clients and people who want to have a great domestic fly fishing experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all what you know, right? And because in the travel business, what makes us trustworthy and why people like to do business with us and come back and trust us with their time, which is huge. I mean, more than their money, really, it's their time, is that we know the places we're talking about. We've been there. We've seen them. We've experienced them multiple times. There's a reason that we've chosen to represent them. It's because we passionately like the places ourselves. It's not a business decision, first and foremost. It's like, this place is cool. I love it. If I was on my own, I'd pay money to come here, and that sort of thing comes through. So for me, it's Montana because, I mean, and Idaho for sure. But I spend most of my time in Montana every year. I have for many, many years, and the country's spectacular. And so when I go back there, it's based on the fishing. And again, like I said, I mean, although I've been to the lodges and know the people and stuff, it's the country and the fishing that bring me back there. And so first and foremost, that's what's in my heart. That's what's in my soul. It's like, oh, I can't wait to be in this particular spot again, that every year I just can't wait to be standing by this little creek in the middle of nowhere, watching these, little cutthroat rise or whatever it be. That's what I want to be doing with my time. And so when I look at lodges, a lot of times the first thing I think about is, I mean, these are my 10 most special personal situations that, places and things I like back there. What are the lodges that can best facilitate other people experiencing that? And so a lot of what we all do is we choose lodges geographically, both for that reason and because we want to be careful we don't choose two lodges that are right beside each other that fish the same water. I mean, that's never been our business model. Our business model is always, choose lodges based on geographical diversity where, you have different experiences with this lodge other than this lodge. And if you have two lodges close to each other, it just doesn't really work. It's, it's almost like you're looking at it as an overflow thing. Well, I book all these people, this lodges, then I don't have anybody to place, to send anybody to, but I better have a backup plan. It's like, it's not the way we really do business. So we've chosen a lot of our lodges because the places are geographically distant from each other, or relatively. A lot of the fishing in Montana, arguably, is some of the best stuff is relatively in one area. There's great fishing everywhere in Montana, but infrastructure-wise and stuff, it's probably 50% of the state has most of it. And so we just go like, okay, what's been my experience? What do I know from personally? What do I know about the lodges there? Who have I met back there? How can I facilitate sending people to amazing experiences where they're going to come back and they're going to say, yeah, you were right. I get what you're talking about now. That place was beautiful. Fishing was fantastic, but more than that, it was the country. And in my heart, that's kind of what I want people to come back saying. I want them to be able to see what I've seen. And the reason I've been going back to Montana for 50 years, I live in some of the best fishing country there is. I can catch more big fish on my home river than I can just about anywhere back there. So it tells you that the numbers of big fish isn't it. And it's great fishing, obviously. I mean, but Montana is so special because they have this country that's not heavily populated with these gorgeous rivers, gorgeous mountains, amazing culture, just the way people live back there in a lot of the smaller towns and that sort of thing. There's just so much to it that kind of gets into your soul. And I recognize it, the same thing like when I go to Patagonia. I mean, to a more extreme level. I mean, the people there, obviously they don't all speak English or anything, but the country is somewhat similar. The fishing is somewhat similar. And so I really gravitate towards that. It's like when I'm traveling internationally, I look forward to everywhere I get to go, but Patagonia is kind of special. And so I realized, you cut me open, I believe trout. I love permit. I love steelhead. I love every arapaima, whatever. Peacock bass. I love it all. But inside, deep inside, I guess I'm a trout guy. And because I love everything about the trout experience, and I just gravitate towards beautiful places. So, so we choose lodges kind of based on that. But two, it's really, really important that you know your customers, right? And what my customers are going to want. I mean, not fishing wise, it's not that big a deal. I know what people want fishing wise. That's for the most part. If I don't, I ask them and I find out. That's easy. But what they want experientially, do they want a really high-end place with amazing service, just gourmet food? Do they want that sort of experience? Or do they want a place that's a little more rustic, where they're never on their own, but they're not catered to quite as closely, or anywhere in between? And so the fishing, once, we're going to make wise choices on the lodges when it comes to fishing. That's a gimme. We know what we're doing. That's a gimme. It really is. But the rest of it, just like international travel, it's the same thing. It's like, what kind of experience are you really looking for? Because there's pretty wide diversity of it out there. And so the process is the same. Somebody calls me up today and says, man, I'd really like to go to Montana next year. And I say, okay, great. You have a general area in mind, or is there a certain style of fishing? Do you really like cutthroats on dry flies, or brown trout on streamers, or lake fishing, or fishing creeks, or what do you like? And enter into a conversation like that and find out what it is they're looking for, and then say, okay, I've got the perfect place for you. So it works the same. But it's coming back to your original question about how we choose lodges. It's a lot of it certainly initially is what fishing do they have? Is their fishing special? But if we choose them, basically they do. They have something that's remarkable about them. They have something about their fishing program is truly remarkable. But past that, what else do they offer to the client?
When I started the Venturing Angler, I was so focused on destinations outside of the United States that I failed to pay attention to the riches we have here. And
yeah, that's the truth. Yeah.
I remember saying to somebody once, something like, I can't imagine how lucky you'd be if you lived wherever. I don't remember what it was.
Right.
And the person responded and said, imagine how lucky they think we are. And
exactly.
Shortly after, someone I know who was guiding in the Seychelles told me, he went on and on about how excited he was to catch jacks.
Yeah. It's like, really?
Right,
you
yeah.
got GTs, man.
and so I don't know if it's like a grass is always greener thing, but we're always just looking farther and farther and farther. But there's so much in the lower 48. What are your what are the things that you think make the U.S. And I keep saying the U.S. We're excluding Alaska and California in this conversation a little bit, but because we're focused now on the lower 48. But what about this area of the country do you think makes it especially attractive as a destination?
Just the diversity of fishing. I mean, not species-wise so much, other than species of trout, but just the different kinds of country, the different kinds of streams, meadow streams, mountain streams, large rivers, small creeks, quality fishing, fisheries that are sometimes managed, or sometimes, by man, or sometimes just managed naturally, organically, by their the fact that they're on a private ranch or they're a long ways away from anybody, and people just don't make the effort to go there. We have such a wealth of private land in the West. It's just crazy, and we do take that for granted. I think when I travel or when I just hear people in different parts of the country or even different countries, it's like, wow, you just can go fish wherever you want. I was like, yeah. And they said, that's amazing. See, you're here in Europe, it's not like that. We can't do that. We have to pay special privileges to fish certain water or hunt different places, or, it's really locked up. And so I think you're right. We do take a lot of it for granted. And a lot of it's really special in the West, particularly. It's like, man, you can just go you can go drive around and say, oh, there's a creek, I'm gonna go fish it. I mean, there's exceptions. Certainly there's private ground, but it's amazing how much public ground there is too. And from my own perspective, I found if I want to walk, it just opens up an entire different world. And so many places in the world, that just isn't the case, whether it's private land or no trails or no way to get to maybe you're in Brazil somewhere and you've got some amazing jungle fishing, but you just can't get at it. You can't on your own or anything, and so the amount of public land, quality fisheries, managed or non-managed, so much of that we take for granted. And the attraction to me, as I mentioned, a lot of that to Montana is like, they call it Big Sky Country for a reason. You're there, and it's just like, it's so amazing. You're walking out of a trout stream, an open meadow, the Upper Madison, or seeing the big sagebrush flats at night, and you're walking out there, and you're just seeing this incredible sunset, and you're looking down as you're walking, you still see fish rising in the dark. It's like, oh, maybe just another 10 minutes, and you just realize I can do whatever I want. I'm here. This is fishing. I'm on. I can have a guide all day, and then I can walk down to the river and fish on my own in the evening if I want. There's so much freedom to it, and the country is so soul enriching. It's just like, it's something about it. It's like, this is what I was meant to do. I mean, this is kind of like, it just, something about it is very unique. And like if you look at like around Northern California here, our fishing really, just pragmatically, is every bit as good as the Montana fishing. It's different. We don't have as many open meadow streams and stuff like that, which I happen to like, maybe just because it's different. But as far as quality fishing and diversity of fishing, we've got really good stuff here, really good. And yet the country is different. And it may be in my soul too, because I grew up here. I, started guiding as a teenager and into my 20s. And so when you guide, you really get to know water because you have to produce, right? And so you really get to, and you have to spend a lot of time on rivers, and they become part of you, and it's really special. But it's going to Montana for me is almost a new awakening. It's like I go back there and everything's new and fresh and cool, and the pace is slow back there. It's not like some of our cities here that are almost frantic and so much going on. Back there, you can just let loose. It's like you flip a switch, and my friend and I don't even look at newspapers. Maybe we check our phone once a day, or we don't go online, don't do anything. We just check out, and it's possible there. At home, that'd be impossible. But if you go to one of these lodges, it's the same thing. I mean, you're catered to. You can do whatever you want. You can go back. You're in the middle of this incredibly beautiful country. You have great people that want you there, are doing everything they can to make your trip memorable. You've got guides that are working with you that want you there and are showing you places that have become near and dear to their hearts because they've grown up there and they know it, and they want to share it with you. And you're seeing a little bit different hatches. You're learning new techniques because these guides have had to learn how to catch their fish. And again, like a lot of times in Montana, those fish are much more dry fly oriented than a lot of our fisheries here are. And so you learn new stuff, and you learn, well, I don't have to just put them in fun just to catch a lot of fish. And these fish, they all want to eat dries. It's crazy. It's not like home. And so it's very different, and it's just exciting and comfortable and new for a lot of people, or wonderfully familiar. But every time I go back, again, I've been going back there every year for 35 years or so, and almost all my life for over 50 years. But every year, my friend and I make a point of adding at least one new stream. And for 35 years, in one little area around West Yellowstone, basically, is where we go everywhere, but West Yellowstone is kind of our hub. And I mean, for 35 years, we've been adding 1 to 4 new streams every year.
Wow.
And so the diversity of fishing back there is crazy. Now, granted, we fish a lot of little creeks as well as the more famous bigger rivers, but I mean, it's endless. and there's so much. And we like hiking in these little backcountry meadows where nobody else goes. And maybe the fish are mostly 10 or 12 inches, but we're fishing 2 weights. Well, it's all amazing. It's all dry fly fishing. And, and so there's stuff like that back there. It's just a lot of their fishing is pretty untouched. And if you want big fish, you go to the more famous rivers, and they produce. They're amazing. And again, it's just, for me, it's kind of special because about 10 years into that 35 years or 40 years, I realized, Mike, put the nymphs down. You're in a different place here. It's not like home. Put a dry fly on, have confidence. And sure enough, at the end of the day, I've caught just as many fish on dry flies as I would have on nymphs. And so that was a big learning curve for me. And one that I like to pass on to people when they call on the phone. It's like, oh, what do I want? This is kind of what I'm looking for. What do I, where should I go? What do I look for? And I'm able to share with them, though, okay, you do some dry dropper fishing back there, sure, but a lot of times you're just going to have a dry fly on there. Forget the dropper, and these fish are going to move to that. And so, anyway, a lot of stuff like that makes the country very special.
There's a story that I don't know if I've ever shared on the Venturing Angler podcast, and if I haven't, it's probably because I'm a little embarrassed about it. But I never knew that the Henry's Fork was the mecca for dry fly fishing. And so years and years ago, I was driving through, and I'm like, yeah, I'll stop here, and was fishing and didn't see any trout coming up. And so I put on a nymph rig and fished for an hour.
Yep.
And then I can't remember.
Wouldn't you?
Right. I couldn't remember if I caught any fish or not. And then I went to the parking lot, and this big white van pulled up and had California tags. And the guy's like, "Are you from California?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What about you?" And he's like, "Uh-huh." And he's like, "You nymphing?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why don't you go back to California?" So
that's nice.
But it was eye-opening in the sense that, like, this is such a special place where you can really have an experience of dry fly fishing that is pretty special. When you were talking about these hatches and so forth, I couldn't help but think about you as a tyer. And I'm sure a lot of people are excited to listen to this episode because they look up to you as a tyer. And it's funny. I was at the fly shop. I was passing through in February, and Justin was like, "Hey, do you want to meet Mercer?" And
oh, brother, no.
I was like, yeah. And then he went in the back and got you. Like, it was like show and tell. and I remember thinking, like, wow, it's Mercer. This is so cool. And so, I know there's a lot of people who have that level of respect for you as a tyer. And so how do you experience the Rockies, for example, as a tyer? Does that make it even more appealing and exciting?
It's a great question, and the answer is absolutely. You brought up early in a podcast about, about different, different kind of tying experiences in different places. And yeah, what I find as a fly tyer is that if I go for a month without fishing, my innovative fly tying skills dry up. They just go away. And so when I'm out fishing all the time, I'm flooded with them constantly. Like, oh, this is a cool something here. I need to, address this. I'll see another situation that just begs for a new pattern or a new situation or new, presentation or whatever it is. And so when I go back there, not only am I fishing every day, and so that's always on like high alert every day. I'm not trying to think about it, but it just is there. It just like somebody highlights situations all day long to me. It's like, look at this. Look, there's a spruce moth. We don't have spruce moths at home. This is, man, I got to do something with this. Or, there's a flav hatch going on. We don't have flavs at home. I want to see what this nymph looks like. And then, when it's emerging, what's it look like in the film? And so, yeah, for me, as a tyer, I want to see what the fish sees. I want to know why it is that the fish feels safe eating a fly. What brings them to eat one thing and not another? When I think about them eating sticks and stuff, it kind of throws a little ball on it. But nonetheless, that's kind of what spins my wheels. It's like, okay, there's a better mousetrap. Like, so we've been fishing parachute Adams forever, and they work really well. But there's times when they don't, and it's like I just feel like I'm missing something. It's like I love the production value of a parachute Adams, but what's going on? And as I've written before and stuff, is sometimes what I come up with is absolute luck. I'll just mess around, and it's like, when it comes to technology, I'm horrible. I can barely plug a computer in. Like Pat, I'm one of the guys I work with here. He loves it. He reads about it, thinks about it. He just dives in. He loves every part of it, and he'll figure stuff out. Like, that's not me. I just like, I hire somebody else to do that. But I'm like that with tying. It just fascinates me. Every part of the insect world, the trout world, I want to be in that. I want to figure it out. I want to know about it. I want to be able to interact with it. And so everyone's different, but that's kind of my world. And I love that part. And so when I go back to Montana, not only do we have a lot of the same hatches and trout food sources that we have here in Northern California, but we have a fair amount that are different and unique. And it's kind of a new playground for me because there is so much dry fly fishing. And so because in Northern California, we're like 80% nymphing and 20% dries, back there it's reversed. And so suddenly I'm like, okay, these fish are coming to dries. I know I can get them on nymphs. That's a gimme. But these fish are willing to come eat dries. So what, for many years, I just used elk hair caddis and their, Adam's parachutes, and they were great. But I noticed after a while that, one evening on the Madison or in a small backcountry creek that had big cutthroats that were touchy, it's like, those don't always work so well. And so I go through all of the different flies that are available at that point in time, and sometimes some would work better, some wouldn't. So it just lights a fire in me. It's like, okay, what is it? Why are these fish, when I see them rising to a hatch, what are they eating? How can I do a better job of fooling them into thinking that my fly is what they really want, making them comfortable coming and eating that, as opposed to thinking, if I shouldn't be eating that, and then eat it anyway or not. And so that's, for me, that's exciting. That's fun. And I like to look at things that maybe a lot of people miss, different emerging styles or what that particular bug looks like in the film, because some of them don't look the same. And sometimes there'll be cripples that consistently, because of some sort of a water style there, or, there might be flying ants at a certain time, or if there's flying ants, do they, are they, when they hit the water, are they drowned, or are they floating on top, or what? There's just a lot of things like that. And certainly, success on the water is what drives me, but there's a lot more to it than that. When I come up with a new fly I'm excited about, I go out and it sucks and it doesn't work. It's like, I'm still kind of pumped. It's like, all right, that was a good try. Something about it, there's something there. It's a germ of a good idea in that. I've got to figure out what it is that makes that better. I know there's something good there, but, and so, back there, it's just a little different, and it gets to open my horizons a little bit as a fly tyer. And yes, over the years, there's been quite a few of my flies that, if not weren't born there, they came to fruition there. One of the most amazing things that I ever came up with was, and it was, as far as experiencing there, was many, many, many years ago, I came up with the Poxyback series, specifically the first one, the Poxyback PMD nymph. And back then there was no brass beads. There's nobody's tying beads. That was all European stuff. Nobody did it. So it was just a PMD nymph, but it was unique. It was different. And I had really good success with it here. I went back there and I went to one of the rivers we fish routinely, and it was ridiculous. It was like fish would go 10 feet out of their way to eat it. And so it's like, whoa. And so, and then that gave me more confidence. And then I brought it back home and fished it with more confidence here. And it turned out to be one of my all-time go-to nymphs for a lot of places, now with a bead usually. But there's been a lot of real successes back there. And not just because the fish are stupid or anything, but because there's a lot of fish per river mile in those rivers. And you get to see a lot of different feeding situations. I might be on a piece of a certain river, and the fishing scenario changes dramatically from 11 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock in the evening. Dramatically. Different insects. The fish move completely out of their normal, or out of one feeding zone into another place. And if you're not onto that, you could go to that stream and miss it all day. You could leave and say, I'm never going back to that creek again. But it's because you're not reading it, right? You have to trust. At some point, somebody tells you, man, Mike, this stream is good. You got to try it. And you go there and it's horrible. It's like, all right, it's not the stream, and we've had a lot of situations like that over the years where our first impressions with streams that we now adore and can't imagine not fishing were grim. It's like, Jim told me, Fred or whoever told me this was a great place, but it's like, there's no fish in here. It's like, it's dead. But then, so it's like, all right, we know that's not true. And so then we start turning over rocks, literally and figuratively, and just start figuring out, okay, what's different about this fish? Maybe in this one stream, it's a high mountain stream and the water is super cold. And so, being there before noon is a total waste of time. These fish are shut down until the sun gets on the water and starts warming up 2 or 3 degrees. Or maybe maybe these fish gorge in the evening, and the next morning they're not really on the feed so much because they're still gorged. They'll turn on about 11 o'clock. Or there's a bunch of stuff like that. And just as I'm intimidated by computers, I love this challenge. And so, it just depends on what you like. But yes, boiling it down to what your question is, it's for a fly tyer like myself, it's a playground. It's like, oh man, I'll never run out of new ideas or new scenarios, new things to try to think up, or new problems to solve, or it's just never ending, because every year I go back there, maybe I'll see a new bug on the water or a new hatch that I had never seen on a stream that I fished 100 times, and so it's just, for me as a tyer, it's just like, it's not why I go, but it's a wonderful, kind of side benefit of it.
Earlier you mentioned Patagonia, and I could tell that you have, affection for that region, and I do too. And one thing that's interesting about going down there is you're catching largely trout that come from Northern California originally.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And but one of the things that I learned, I love Patagonia, but one of the things I learned when I went there for the first time is how lucky we are in the U.S. And it goes back to access. I would see stags and wild pigs and, all this wonderful water. And I learned really, really quickly that there just isn't public access like there is here. It's not even close.
Right.
And so
Nope.
you were just describing experimenting on the river and trying things. And that's something that you can really do in the U.S. West because of access. And that's one of the great things about
Exactly right.
the lower 48.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's a huge part of the picture. It really is. So often when we book trips internationally, it's either places are so remote that there is no private ownership. It's just, it's impossible almost, because you go in such remote places, or you go into places that do have access. And so the most remarkable fishing is going to be behind locked gates. And so, yeah, but right here at home, in the American West, yes, there are land issues, of course, private landowners. There's issues that are ongoing, and they're very, they're big issues. But overall, as you have kind of alluded to, if you came here from Europe, you would be blown away by the public access. We here in Northern California, we just want to go out fishing or hunting. I can go out and fish or hunt for a couple hours in the morning before I come to work. Easy, because it's so close and it's so available. I don't really have to worry about where I'm going, and most of it's public. And I've come to kind of take that for granted, I've realized over my life. And as I get older, I take it for granted less and less. It's like, it's such a privilege, and we can't lose that. But yeah, and American West has that, and it's a huge draw.
This next question might be frustrating, and you can feel free to dodge it, but with all the time that you've spent in Montana and Idaho and in those areas, do you have a favorite river?
No, it's a great question, and yes, I do. But the fact is that favorite river changes from year to year. And it's not a dodge; it's just truth. My friend Jim and I go back there, and we'll find a new creek every year. It's like, oh, this place is amazing, and of course, it's new to us, so you have the beauty and excitement of something new. It's like we'll hike into a little amazing mountain meadow with elk and bison all around, and you can tell no one's been in there fishing at all. And we had to hike in there for an hour to even get to the river or stream in most cases. And during the day we have elk, we have wolves howling, or it's like, at the end of the day we come out and we look at each other like that is our new favorite stream.
Right.
And then for maybe 2 years that's our favorite stream, and then we'll find another new place, and that whole process of just something new and exciting and something we haven't seen starts again, and we have a new favorite stream. So yeah, I do have a favorite stream, but it's going to change depending on the year you ask me. But yeah, I could name off dozens of streams that over the last 50 years have been my favorite stream. And they still are, in some ways, my favorite for whatever it was that drew me there and whatever I found the most remarkable about them. But I think as travelers, we see a lot from international travelers. They want something new and exciting. They're going because They want to be blown away. They want to see some fishing that they've never seen before, something that that's just new and exciting to them, and they want to go with people they enjoy. And and so things like that. The lower 48 has a lot to offer because it's relatively easy to get there. You're going to probably find your favorite stream. It may only be for a year or two until you find another new one, but you're going to see things that you probably didn't see at home, whether it be Northern California, the East Coast, or the Southwest, or whatever. It's unique, elevation-wise, scenery-wise, fisheries-wise, people-wise, culturally-wise. It's unique. We have this crazy country that has so many different cultures in different areas. And as a kid who grew up on a ranch, I like that ranching kind of environment. I just like it. This open spaces kind of environment. And so I'm drawn to that. And the fact that it's there and it's public land is amazing. And so, yeah, and I would tell you, getting back to your question, after all the years of fishing the big name rivers back there, I mean, all the Madisons and Gallatins and Missouris, you name it, there's a bunch of them. Really, really, really well-known rivers, and for good reason. They produce a lot of big fish. If you were to shadow me on my Montana trips for about the last 20 years, you'd say, Mike, where are we going? This is just a little bitty creek. Is that where we're going to fish? It's like, yes, it is. And this is because, again, all to ourselves, it's like having your own private stream for the day. And anymore, the big fish aren't that important to me. Yeah, sure, I fish the big name rivers 3 or 4 days during my trip, and we catch the big fish, and it's like old home week. It's like, it's just so cool to be fishing the Madison or the Gallatin or the Yellowstone, whatever it be. So cool to be doing this again. But it's an integral part of the trip. But it would not be the same trip as it would be if we didn't hike in the backcountry and experientially have this different experience and not have to worry about somebody walking in behind us or anything like that. We know we're going to be the only ones in this creek all day. We can take our time. We can fish a mile or 5 miles, whatever we want. We're going to have some amazing experience. We might be catching these beautiful 8 to 10 inch brookies, and all of a sudden out of nowhere there's an 18-inch rainbow. It's like, what in the world? Did you see that? And it's not that it really almost wasn't so much the big fish. It was just the uniqueness of the experience and how we can still be surprised, and we can, we still get our breath taken away in a little creek somewhere. And we've forgotten that could happen that way. We get in this mindset that only way we're going to really be blown away is just catch a bigger fish and a bigger fish and a bigger fish. It's like there's a lot more to it than that. And at the end of the day, I've had days when I've had crazy numbers of big fish, just caught so many fish from 16 to 23 inches. And then I've had days when on a little creek when I've caught good numbers of fish between 8 and 14 inches. And my soul was equally fulfilled both days. It wasn't like, oh man, I'll never date another day like that in my life. It's like, I'm so encouraged, so happy I got all those big fish. It's like anymore. It's like, I don't know. I look at a 9-inch brookie out of a stream I could jump across, and it's like, that thing is a jewel. That thing, I should look at that thing, and that should be blazed into my mind, the beauty of this little char. That's an amazing creature. And another river, a bigger river, I pick up a 21-inch brown. It's like, look at that thing. It's like a dinosaur in this stream. It's like, that thing's amazing. Its size, and I'll catch a fish out of a little bitty creek in the high country. I think what that trout has been through. I mean, for him to survive over winter at 9,000 feet in this little bitty creek that must almost freeze solid, what an incredibly difficult life. And here I am, I'm catching him in this beautiful sunny day when it's like not a care in the world. There's high mountain meadows all around me and lodgepole pines and elk bugling. And it's like, this is crazy. And think about the life this little trout has been through. And it's things like that for me that really draw me to Montana year after year after year. Just high country, beautiful country. And from a business standpoint, the fact that they've got amazing lodges there that can allow people to go there and experience it, without having put in, I put in a lot of time to know what I know about Montana. I've had a lot of down days and never days I regret. I mean, I love the country, but you can go to a lodge and experience a fair amount of the Montana that I've experienced immediately, with the help of, guides and a lodge that's well set up on good rivers and geographically set up perfectly to access different rivers within an hour's drive or so. And each one of these lodges, whether it be, Shields or Ruby or Madison River or all these different lodges, they all are on unique fisheries. And almost inevitably, they will have one river that's their home river, but it would be a mistake to spend your whole week there, your 5 days there, wherever long you're going to stay. And they all have, very rarely are these lodges set on a 1 week schedule. You can go for how many days you want. But usually, yes, you want to fish the home river. There's a reason they situated their lodge there, but almost always there's some kind of behind the curtain streams that don't have the reputation, but they're amazing and they're incredible fisheries in their own right. And, I always tell people, if the guide says, are you up for an hour and a half drive? Don't just immediately discard it. It's like an hour and a half. That's 3 days of my 3 hours of my day taken out. If the guide's excited about it, driving in Montana is way different than driving in a lot of places. An hour drive is nothing. And so if you can drive for an hour and have access to 5 other different streams that maybe you've never heard of, do it, because those places are just as likely to light you up as the marquee fishery is. And so I always tell people, fish the marquee fishery, fish the Big Name River, but don't just do that. And this is a chance to see some stuff that you never knew existed and experience something that is different than the glory fishing for the big fish. And so, I guess all kind of ties in.
Yeah, and there's so much diversity within the smallest areas in Montana.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easy to have your favorite river be the one that you just fished, right? So,
yeah, exactly.
I remember fishing the Madison once and going out and immediately catching like a 24-inch or something like that brown.
Oh my gosh, that's a big fish in the Madison.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, when I say immediately, it was like I caught it immediately, and I was like, great, this is my favorite river forever now. And then,
of course.
And then the next day I fished the Gallatin in the canyon, and it was a completely different experience. I didn't have a day of catching huge fish, but it was just as, rewarding and wonderful. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, driving from the Madison to the Jefferson is some of the most beautiful country, and it's worth the drive.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, exactly.
And California is that way too. I mean, it
really is.
The Trinity is very different than the Eel, which is very different than the McCloud, and I guess much of the West is that way, where you don't have to drive far to see very, very different water.
It's true. It's true. We're so blessed out there in this area. We really are. And we do sometimes take it for granted because it's interesting because we assume it's always going to be like that. I remember, guiding in the 70s on Hat Creek, and one of the most beautiful, incredible spring creeks on the planet at that. I mean, really amazing. I just assume it's always going to be like that. I'm a kid. I'm 18, 20 years old. It's like, this is amazing. It's where I learned a lot of my stream craft as far as spring creeks go, as far as difficult selective fish go. And you fast forward 30 years, it's like, oof, it's not the same. Then you fast forward another 10 years and like to now, and it's like, oh, it's coming back. I mean, Hat Creek now is showing signs of life like we used to see back in the 70s. And it's exciting. But there's so many things that I think that that we don't need to, but we're remiss if we don't appreciate them for what they are now. We don't appreciate the diversity that you described. It's crazy good. And in our lifetime, it will change, but some of it not as much as others. I mean, there's creeks I fish here in Northern California that have not changed at all in all the years I've been fishing. Other creeks are totally different. But yeah, the diversity is kind of like public lands. Diversity is another beautiful thing that, there's places you go that you'll maybe have one great river. Maybe you're out in a place that's just not conducive to great trout fishing, but you've got a tailwater or something like that, where you've got one amazing fishery. And that's cool, but man, being able to have a different experience here in Northern California, where I go fish a little creek for a little trout one day, I go to a big river and throw streamers for striped bass the next, I go fish the Trinity for steelhead the next, I go fish a spring creek the next day. I mean, it's just crazy. There's little creeks that I can drive to in no time from my home. There's places I got to invest 3 hours to get to. There's just everything. And so, yeah, I mean, probably in fact, I'm sure of it. If I lived in Montana, I'd be taking my vacations in Northern California. And that's because the diversity. I talked to all my friends that live in Montana. They said, the summers here are amazing. And we love it so much. We put up for the winters, but then they look longingly at my pictures of fishing the lower Sac in winter and catching these 20-inch big fat pig rainbows. And oh man, here we're like in an igloo in January. We can't even think unless we ice fish. We can't fish, and so every place has their own unique place. But yeah, for that short spring, summer, fall in the Rockies, there's nothing like it.
They're pretty lucky with how good it is there. I floated the Madison in the winter a couple of years ago and did not see a single other angler. And it's not that the fishing, right. Yeah. It's not that the fishing was bad. It's just so good at other times of the year.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
It's like, why would you?
Back here, they like that would be okay.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And
it's like cold.
And February in California on the Steelhead Rivers, like the Trinity in February, is one of my favorite times of the year here.
Man, it's on fire. Exactly. The river's full of fish usually. Exactly right.
And it's wet and beautiful, and there's the fog.
And smells right.
Yeah,
feels right. Exactly. And we've got all these rivers with special regs now. Our trout streams that are so good the rest of the year, you can fish them in the winter, and they're usually not as good. Just kind of as you just alluded to in the Medicine, they're not usually as good in the winter, but they're 30 minutes away, and they're plenty good enough. Those fish still eat in the winter, and there's no snow or anything. It's not like we've got such a temperate climate here. You just adapt to it, and you get to spend an amazing day on the water with nobody around. And so, yeah, it is the diversity here and the seasonality, the lack of season-intensive limitations in Northern California is remarkable.
Is there a day that for you sums up what fly fishing the West is all about?
Right, and there's actually a lot of days, and what you just said, sometimes makes it. It's not always the fishing. I remember one day in a little creek, a tributary of the Madison, where we've been catching these beautiful cutbows and rainbows and having a good morning. And we just sat on the edge of the stream eating our lunch. My friend and I, lunchtime sometimes is one of the most important parts of the day for us, because we just sit there and look. We've been intensely fishing all day, and we stop. We sit on the edge of this little mountain stream in the middle of nowhere and look around finally. And it's like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. And I remember one time we were doing that, and this time it wasn't a meadow stream. It was a tight little freestone river. And we sat there along the edge of the stream, and we're eating our lunch. And I, at one point I heard my friend make a noise. I looked over him, and he kind of nodded his head, like just past me. And I looked around, I was like, what? I looked around, and there's a bear walking right there, close to us. And I go, whoa. and then the bear just, he looks at us, and he stops, and he just kind of considers us. And then he gets in the stream and walks across. And I mean, the bear was close, and really close. And I thought, that's amazing. And so then we ate our lunch, and my friend went upstream and I went downstream, and then we'll meet at the end of the day. And I was walking down this trail along the stream, and I was just like singing to myself and not just kind of like thinking about things. Wasn't really thinking. I wasn't really thinking about fishing. I just like, I'm going to go someplace and fish, But all of a sudden, these bushes in front of me just erupt, and there's a adult mama grizzly and two, like, not 2-year-old cubs probably, but old 1-year-old cubs. They're big, and they just blew up. And I mean, I literally almost walked on them, and they blew up, and immediately, thank goodness, they ran away from me across the creek and ran up the mountain. And so, I mean, twice in a half an hour, I'd been, I could have reached out with a 10-foot rod practically and touched bears. And that's kind of a cool thing that can happen in that kind of country. I remember one time my friend and I walked into this little mountain meadow stream that we go to every year. And it's a long walk into it. And you go through pine trees and different, ecosystems getting there. And then finally you open up into this big mountain meadow. And just as we opened up into this meadow and got into this little trail that kind of follows the creek, we started hearing a wolf start talking to us. Wow. And howling and yipping. And we were like, what in the world? And we looked around, we finally saw it was on the other side of the creek, probably 150 yards away, quite a ways away. And it was a big, giant black wolf. And it followed us all morning, just kept talking to us. We'd fish and fish. And this big old giant black wolf would kind of just parallel us, just kind of keep going and talking and talking and talking. And it was so cool. I mean, you don't usually get to see wolves like that. And if you do, they're usually running away or, they're not interacting like that. One time we're fishing the Upper Gallatin, and this beaver started following me in the water. I was on the bank. He just started following me. I mean, not like for 10 feet. He followed me for 150 yards.
Oh, wow.
I'd stop and fish, and he'd stop. And he'd just stop and watch me. I'd fish. I'd get out and start. He'd follow me, just keep swimming after me. I mean, it's like and he was looking at me. I was like, it wasn't like it was just some chance thing. He just followed me everywhere, like a dog, everywhere I went. I mean, I could go on and on. So many crazy things that have happened. And yeah, fishing is always a part of it, but so often it's not the most memorable part. But it's a really important part. I mean, I have a million fishing stories. I mean, just crazy stuff. Things like you. The first time I ever went to the Henry's Fork, I was, this was back in the '60s, and I didn't know. I mean, I had just begun fly fishing, but I didn't know a lot. I mean, that's not true. It was early '70s actually. But I went there and I was with my parents. We went on a family vacation, and they dropped me off with my fly rod. And I'd heard about the Henry's Fork. I didn't know anything about it, but they dropped me off. Said, "All right, we'll pick you up this evening." And went down there, and I witnessed one of those amazing rusty spinner falls on the Henry's Fork, and there was nobody around. I mean, back in those days, there wasn't that many people, and so I had a mile of the run, not a mile, but probably a quarter to half a mile river all myself. I couldn't see anybody. And here's all these fish that were, 15 to 23 inches rising and just sipping rusty spinners all around me. And it's like, this is what people talk about. And back home, I grew up on little creeks, fishing, finding my stream craft on little Rocky Mountains creeks and stuff. And I'd gotten pretty good at them at 12 or 14 years old, but this was a whole nother thing. And I actually hooked a couple because I had rusty spinners with me. I knew what they were. And so that was it made such an impression on me as a kid, seeing that, this storied river in its prime. And I didn't know any about that. Again, I don't know, it's just what it is. But I hadn't seen very many 16 to 20 inch fish in my lifetime before, especially just being surrounded by them eating dry flies. Usually as growing up as a kid, if I didn't catch fish that big, I had to use bait, right? And so this was just so foundational to becoming a tyer and understanding trout streams. And there's just so many fishing stories. They're endless. But a lot of times what I remember the most is going to be maybe not those fishing stories, but what happened during the day that just didn't have anything to do really with the fish.
That's fantastic. And if that doesn't get people excited about fly fishing the West, I don't know what could. Mike, I appreciate the conversation. For those who want to learn more, head over to theflyshop.com and check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, Mike mentioned earlier sort of the history of Hat Creek. There's a great video of him explaining that on the Fly Shop's Vimeo and YouTube pages too. Mike, thanks so much.
Perfect. Exactly. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.